New chapter. We are starting chapter 7, which is the skeletal system. Skeletal system, quite a bit of information. We're obviously going to be looking a lot at bones. Bones are active. We think of bones almost not being living because they're kind of stationary. We find them in places. But inside of you, bones are a very active, living tissue. Each bone has several types of tissues that we'll find inside. Bone itself is considered a tissue. Cartilage, dense connective tissue, blood. In order for bones to heal, somehow they have to have a blood source. Nervous tissue, and therefore your bones are considered an organ. So each bone is an organ. The function of bones, muscle attachment, which allows your body to move, protection and support of soft tissues, so your rib cage, your sternum, very important for protection of your heart and lungs, vital organs. Blood cell production, we'll talk about how your bone is very important for producing blood cells. And then storage of salts, calcium, lots of inorganic materials. So muscle attachment, protection, support, produces blood cells, and storage. If we look at different types of bones, and I've got my little basket of bones out and about, there's different kinds, and they are classified according to their shape. So if I pick out an arm, so this is the shoulder blade, so don't look at that part. We are looking at a long bone. So this would be my humerus, the long bone in the top part of your arm. This would be considered a long bone. Your femur, the longest, largest bone in your body, would be an example of a long bone. Short bones, if you look in your wrist, there are a lot of little short bones. Your ankles are the same way. They are short, almost kind of square, a little bit rounded, not a specific shape, but they are very small bones. A sesamoid bone would specifically be your patella, which I don't know if I have one of those right now. Yep, I do. And this actually comes from this is a real human skeleton. So this has been inserted, but your patella, which is your kneecap, if you notice, there's not a joint that attaches it anywhere. Your patella is this round bone that sits in front of your knee, and it is attached by tendons and ligaments, which is why you can move your kneecap kind of back and forth and around a little bit. So sesamoid is your patella, which is your kneecap. Flat bones would be like your ribs, and if you notice here again, ribs are easily broken. They are not very thick at all. So they are considered a thin bone. I'm stuck. Here we go. So if you look at your bones, and here again, so here are ribs. And notice this has been around for a long period of time. A lot of these ribs are broken. And the reason they're broken is they are flat and they are thin. So they're very easy to break. And now this is dead tissue. Obviously it's not alive anymore. So a lot of the stuff that was inside of it has lessened, and therefore they're not as strong as they once were. So flat, they are very flat, typically thin. Ribs, scapula would be considered a flat bone, and then some of the plates that are in your skull would be considered flat bones. Irregular, most common, would be your vertebrae. Some of your facial bones have irregular shapes also. So irregular vertebrae, we'll talk specifically about those later. So your bones are classified by their type, what they look like, and how they're shaped. So basically there's long, short, flat, irregular, and then your patella is a specific example of a short bone. When I look at a long bone, there's specific parts to it. So the expanded ends of a bone, a long bone, are called an epiphyseus. It is outside. So I will take your femur for now. So if I take a long bone, notice the outside on both sides are expanded. If I look at your tibia, the outside is expanded. The outside, it's thinner in the middle and it's expanded on the outside. So this out expanded part is called epiphyseus. It is covered by articular cartilage. Articulate means to join. So articular cartilage is going to appear where it's going to join somewhere. So this outside part will be covered with articular cartilage. The shaft of the bone is called diaphysis. And then around the shaft of the bone, if it's living, is a tough layer of connective tissue called periosteum. And if I live on a farm, so we find bones quite frequently. Even, if you have fresh chicken, you can kind of scratch on that bone and feel that outer layer. It'll almost peel off of the layer of the bone. So peri means outside. Periosteum is the covering on the outside. And it's what's going to join with ligaments and tendons. Diaphysis, the shaft, contains a hollow cavity, and inside of that cavity is the endo means inside, endosteum, and then it's going to be filled with marrow. So here is an old cow bone, and I can see this opening on the inside, where I can stick my finger in now because it's dead, where that was filled with bone marrow. Because the bone has died, that marrow has disintegrated, it's gone. So now all that's left is the medullary cavity. That cavity is lined with endosteum, inside lining. So periosteum outside, endo is going to be inside lining the cavity on the inside. Bone shape, very, very important. Bony processes are going to indicate where there's an attachment. So a process is something that sticks out. So anything that sticks out is typically going to indicate points of attachment for muscles. Openings or grooves are going to be places for blood vessels or nerves. And then a depression is going to be a place where articulation or joining of bones happens. Two types of bone, compact and spongy. Compact makes up the wall, so in this bone that I had, this is very compact bone. It is hard. I'm not breaking it. It's very hard to break through. Compact bone makes up the wall of the diaphysis. The epiphyseus, so the outside of each bone, these ends, ends is kind of an easy way to remember, is filled with spongy bone. And especially now that this is dead, I can take my fingernail and push on this spongy bone, and I can actually kind of break those little pieces. So spongy bone is not nearly as strong as the compact bone. Compact bone is going to protect. Spongy bone helps make your bones be lighter so they're not quite so heavy. And spongy bone has a lot of little bony plates called trabeculae. So it's called spongy bone because it looks like a sponge. And all of those little bony plates that go across and branch around are called trabeculate. So compact bone and spongy bone are different. Diagram. I've shown you real bones. This is your diagram. You are responsible for knowing absolutely everything on this diagram. So if we start at the top, epiphyseal plates, and I don't know that that's showing up real well. There we go. If I start at the top, epiphyseal plates, they're at the ends, and they're this little line right here. At the ends of your long bones, those are your growth plates. So an epiphyseal plate is a scientific name for your growth plate. If those are injured before you're an adult, that can stunt the growth of that bone. So proximal, closest to point of attachment, so this might be my shoulder, so that would be the proximal attachment. Distal is going to be down further away from the body. Each one is an epiphyseus. Diaphysis then is just this long middle part of the bone. Periosteum, peri outside, it's the outside lining. Then I can look and see this would be compact bone. And inside I have my marrow that fills that cavity. So the empty space is the cavity, medullary cavity. It is filled with yellow marrow and it is filled with blood vessels that are going to support your bone. The endosteum is the lining on the inside. So that diagram, you need to know every part of that diagram. And I will stop there for now.